to have a, first of all, I'm just so happy to be with all of you. It's so nice. And today's discussion is discussing death. And, I thought, why not? It's such a beautiful thing, and so many people don't like it, and some people they just hate it. Some people are extremely afraid of it, and there are crazy people like myself, and I'm like so excited when I think of death because it's just such a beautiful thing because it's just very close to rebirth and the cycle of life goes on. And one of the reasons is also because 2 days ago, I got a call, and the call was, Veda, you need to come because uh, our friend, he's in the ER and he's not going to make it. I said, okay. I packed my bags. I didn't know where I was going. I packed my bags and I said, and I was texting and I said, what's going on? Where am I going? He said, so this friend of ours in Tennessee, his name is Dr. Kiran, is his name. And he has 2 kids. They're also close friends and students of mine. One of them is a cardiologist, one works for the United Nations. And so I said, this is what families do. When we hear people need us, we show up. We don't ask for any timelines. We're ready to go. So I got on my car and I started driving. It's a 4.5 hours drive to Tennessee and Nashville. And as I was going there, they were having debates, and they said, no, 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 Veda, you don't need to come today, come tomorrow. I don't think he's going to die today. So just come tomorrow, you can see him, everything will be fine. So I said, okay. So I drive back about 45 minutes. I drive back to Atlanta. And then I called back in the night. I said, what's the situation? He said, doesn't look good. And so what should we do? So I gave them some recommendations. In the yoga text, they actually explain to us how to prepare someone's consciousness for departure. And that is one of the most beautiful things that I get to experience. I know that many of you know one of our dear students and a friend and a community builder in Europe. Her name was Kamala. She was very close to Dhyana Devi. She loved Dhyana Devi. They were yogi partners. So I got the call to go there. So when I went there, and we had the most incredible experience with her and Keshavi and Durga Devi and many others that were an observer to the departure and how to prepare someone's consciousness for departure. And I know that Keshavi talks about it as though it was one of the biggest miracles that she has ever seen in her life. And how death is such a beautiful thing. It's a celebration and it's union with God. And so it's something that I enjoy doing to help people transmigrate from one body to another, but in the right frame of consciousness. Because we understand from the Gita, it's one of the foundational wisdom texts that we use in the yoga circles, that yam yam vapi smaram bhavam. There's a beautiful text that explains whatever consciousness that we have when we leave this world, that consciousness carries you to the next body. So it's such a beautiful practice to help people to be in the right consciousness for them to determine their next body in their life. And so that's why I'm so always excited to serve. Getting back to the original story, I came back, they told me he wasn't going to make it. I guided them through the process, what to do. And fair enough, I had this feeling that, I should just keep driving, but they said, no, no, just come back next day. Fair enough, I get a message that at 2:02, they prepared everything, and at 2:02, he leaves his body. And it was effortless. He literally left this world in a matter of 2 minutes from, the family reaching there and family saying all their goodbyes and saying, hey, Dad, thank you so much. Hey, husband. Hey, uncle. Everybody came there. They all said their goodbyes. And after they did all this spiritual art to help someone depart, 2 minutes after all of that, he left. So I was late. I wasn't able to be there, but they did everything so nicely. I went next day to meet the family, to, they were very well connected in Nashville and Kentucky area because, there is about dozens of family members who are in the medical field, and they're all surgeons and doctors, and they seem to be very materially affluent. But the difficulty was that they had so much dependence and power in control of the material resources around their life. It was difficult for them to understand what happened to the father. Like, the spark was just gone. Like, what really happens? So we had some really nice discussions around that. And we did some really nice kirtans, really ecstatic. And so I was thinking, why not discuss this beautiful topic? And what better way to do it than with all of you, to open our hearts out and just have an open discussion about it, and have Radha Priti on board so we can discuss this, because there is a beautiful text in the Gita. For those of you who have not heard about the Gita, Gita is a yoga text that is a dialogue between two friends, and they're discussing how to deal with your family members trying to take everything away from you, including your shelter, your home, your kingdom. Everything was taken away from them. And now, in order to get everything back, you have to fight to death. And they're ready to kill you with the most deadliest of weapons. And so these two friends are having a dialogue in this mist, and they're talking about the journey of the soul that resides within the body. And so, Radha Priti, what is the text that we were discussing to discuss on?
All right, I'll read the translation. Do you remember the Sanskrit?
If you tell me the first word, yes.
Dehina?
Dehinosmin yatha dehe komaram yovanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhirastatra na muhyati. That's the Sanskrit.
Nice.
English, please.
As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change.
So yeah, you want to hear something really crazy?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Everyone is sad when I get there, right? Everyone is crying and everyone is sad. And I go in there and I'm like, hi, everybody. And everybody's looking at me like, who the hell is this guy? Why is he happy that our uncle just passed away and our father just left, my husband just left, and here he is just coming, has the audacity to come and smile at this event? So that's what I thought was people were thinking. So that's when you said a sober person is not bewildered by the change. I'm not a sober person, but just to have the knowledge of how the soul journeys through, I think it's very freeing.
Well, at the same time, Veda, you said you didn't know the person very well. So if it was like your family member, you might have not been so sober around the
I've only known
situation,
him
right?
for 25 years.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought you said you didn't know the person very well. All right. Well, I guess that goes out then. Maybe you just weren't attached.
Maybe, yes. So has anyone ever encountered death before in their life? Has anyone seen or heard of someone leaving?
Yeah, I didn't cry either, if that kind of puts things in perspective. I don't quite get why people do that, really. I mean, I understand the human aspect of it, but I have always looked at it as celebration. So I'm also the weird person that just shows up and has a time of their life, basically, when someone dies. I can't wait for me to die. So I don't know why everyone's so hung up on it.
Wow, Carolina. That's pretty deep.
Yeah, how's that?
Pretty deep.
I thought it was pretty lighthearted, but
That's pretty deep though. Okay, Radha, what do you think? What's your
I think, well, I was thinking about a couple things. One, this passage talks about how the body goes from youth to childhood to old age, or childhood to youth to old age. And it's funny, I'm pregnant right now. My baby's a tomato, but today, by the way, he's a tomato.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Isn't that funny how they do that with the fruits? It's fun. Anyway, so he's a tomato. And I'm like gathering things for when he's going to be born. And I'm very like, I don't want to spend a lot of money. I like go to thrift stores and get stuff because in my head, I'm like, he's only going to use this for like a couple months and then we're going to get rid of it. So what is the point of investing a lot into it and then just getting rid of it? So it's like so easy for us to like conceptualize this, like this body is changing. That's happening. And to live like that. But to live like the soul is eternal and it's like the most important thing, the reason that we're here. It's not so easy to live like that every day, we get so like entangled in like this or that or the problem of the day or their bodily conception that it's like if we were really living like we knew the soul was eternal and that's why we're here, our day-to-day would look so different, most of us, right?
Yes, that's the whole goal of life, to understand that we are eternal and that we should live life like there's no tomorrow.
What does that look like though? Because people say that too. They're like, oh, live like there's no tomorrow. It's like, I'm gonna go skydiving or I'm gonna do this or that crazy thing that's on my bucket list. But like, what does that actually like if tomorrow, what would that mean for you, Veda?
Okay, everyone has a different way of there's no tomorrow, what that means for them, because some people think I'm just gonna go enjoy my senses. They think that enjoyment of the senses with the sense objects is the way to live life. For a yogi who's practicing bhakti, no tomorrow means that every day could be our last. And so we live every day in the moment, so much so that we are so centered in our hearts that, hey, you want to take me today? You want to evict me from my house? I'm ready. My things are packed. So this is what it means for a yogi, that we are living life like there is no tomorrow. There's only today. And there's not today, there's only now. And this is life living in the mode of goodness. And so that's what it looks like. That, we can't get caught up in thinking that this material body that we have is a permanent. It is not something that is going to last forever. And science, I think, there are some papers I remember reading a long time ago. They said that every 7 years, the whole body changes. Everything in our body changes. So basically, we die every 7 years and you get a new body. So why should anyone lament? Because it is not the body that actually is permanent. When I was young, this is funny, crazy, because I was a little rebel. And one point I was hanging out with these American boys who had scientific backgrounds, and they were just saying, you know, Veda, this creation is just a bunch of chemicals. There's nothing other than just chemicals. Everything's just chemicals. And I was thinking, you know, that is so true. Because I was still, you know, my little rebellion yogi stage. And I was thinking how mother and father, they get together, they just mix some chemicals together, and there comes out Veda. So yeah, we're created a bunch of chemicals. And very interestingly, that concept also became disillusioned when I saw death. First time I heard about my mother's death, I was 14, and I didn't quite realize what it meant. But then we used to go to the Ganga every day from the monastery, go bathe in the Ganga. And in India, they burn the bodies on the side of the Ganges. In America, everything is so curated and invisible to the people. But in India, birth, old age, disease, and death is all in front of you. So we're going to the Ganga, and they were burning this body. And I was completely, I heard about it, but I was still a young teenager. And I'm seeing this body lay on this, on piles of wood. And you can see, and he's not moving. So I paused there and I said, what's going on? And said, oh, such and such is dead. So I said, but he's right there. He's just laying down. He's just sleeping. And they said, no, he's dead. We're going to burn him. And I didn't want to ask too many questions. So I just observed the first cremation of my life, early teens, watching this person laying there, and I see, oh, he looks completely fine. And I realized that all the chemicals that he was made with was still there in his body. It's not the chemicals were taken out. Everything was still there. His hands, everything was there, but somehow there was something missing there. And that missing link is the consciousness. And consciousness is a spark of the soul. And this is what I understand and read from the Gita. So that was my crazy first experience of death, and that disillusionment of how everything is just a bunch of chemicals, random chemicals, you know, people just putting it together and creating souls, which I was like, okay, this is what Gita is talking about.
All right. So that was pretty interesting and to think about. I remember doing the same thing in Nepal, actually, one time, watching the bodies be burned. But if we were all going to go around to like start living our days tomorrow, like we knew that the soul was eternal and we weren't living for this body, what would be like 3 things that would maybe look different about our lives? Or what would look different about your life if you were living as if, I mean, I know sadhana, definitely investing time in sadhana every day so that we can really start to try to imbibe these realizations from the great sages. But what are some other things? How else would our lives look different, maybe?
If
I'm very sorry. Is there just a possibility that maybe we can go back to the previous point just for a second? Because I wanted to raise something here, because isn't it the case that before we come here, we know exactly when we're going to die, how we're going to die, and we choose that. And even though we may not consciously remember, isn't it the case that we subconsciously know deep in our heart when is going to be our last day? So it isn't exactly like every day could be our last day, because that's not really how it works, is it?
it's a great question, Carolina. You want me to tackle that? You want me to tackle
Yeah,
Carolina, or Radha Priti, you want to tackle her?
both.
You're a Pittsburgh Steelers. You can tackle her.
Because the way I understand it, unless we seriously deviate from our path in a way that is kind of just so far off that maybe it's best if we start over, we really, for the most part, live off our lives the way we're kind of supposed to the extent that we're supposed to. Correct me if I'm wrong. Tell me more.
Yes.
Because that's what I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful question. So it explains in the wisdom text, when we study the extensive writings in the Vedas, we see that when the soul comes into this world, it's really cool. When they're in the mother's womb, they actually have memories of many, many lifetimes. They bring it with them when they're in the mother's womb. But when the mother gives birth to the baby, both the mother and the child go through such excruciating pain. It is considered, the Puranas explain the wisdom text, that the child goes through so much pain that all his bones of the children are almost dislocated as they come out of the birth canal. And the child is in so much pain that all the memories of previous life is erased. So when you come in, you have a clean slate. You do not remember anything from your previous life. And that's one of the reasons some people do regression, like I've done regressions, where we are able to help people access different parts of their previous lives, you know. So do you live life as though it's already predestined? Yes. There is a plan when the divine offers a gift to a couple who are deeply in love and union with each other and God, then the divine sends a beautiful gift in this world. And you'll be surprised to know that the gift that you get in this world is an opportunity for you to somehow try and connect to the divine through this beautiful innocence and purity. Because they have nothing, they have no preconceived ideas because everything has been erased. But as we come into this world, we are exposed to so much. Then we start to alter or gain our identity as who we are based on our environments and the people who brought us into this world. And so therefore, we can and we will choose to take matters into our own hands and make decisions in life that could shorten our lifespan and interfere with the divine plans. So you can't just live your life as long as you're supposed to live, because you have free will to determine how you want to live your life and how long you want to live your life. You could live your life according to the divine plans, divine architecture, divine design, or you live according to your design. And your design could mean indulging in your senses and in their deep attachment to the objects of the senses, and be completely governed by the mind and not by the true nature of who you really are. So therefore, your question is a deep question, but the wisdom texts, they give us very detailed explanation. Yes, you do have the right to live your full life, but that is a choice that each and every one of us gets to make. We choose how and what do we live for.
Okay, and then just lastly, I was just wondering, because I do believe we choose the way we die, and say if we perform certain acts that kind of shorten our lifespan, are we still going to die the same way we were meant to die in this lifetime, just like sooner? Or
no, actually no, that is also determined by your actions.
okay.
So the only people that can choose when to die and how to die are people who have such evolved consciousness. Like, I give you an example. One of my teachers, I have said this maybe to some of you personally, but one of my teachers, such an exalted being, he was just sitting with his students in a room. He was just sitting and having a discourse like this, a sangha. And then he goes, I think it's time for me to go now. So All of you, please take care of yourselves. And he offers them his respects. He looks up, he drops his head, and he leaves this world. I mean, it's the most insane death that I have ever seen. Insane in the sense that it was so cool. Like someone can just literally pick where, when, and how they're going to die. Seriously? And this is what I mean by evolved consciousness. That you get to pick where, when, and how you leave this world. Because you're in such synchronicity with the divine that basically you're like, hey, I'm coming to you right now. Like, hey, Radha, I'm coming to your house in 2 hours. Can you make some pasta for me? I'm headed over there. So this is how the sages can leave this world and get into the next world and the next dimension of existence. This is something that happened in front of my own eyes. So that is something. But normally people in this world are bound by time, space, and different degrees of karma that we cannot pick that. We are being forced by karma, our body, our mind, and the quality of life that we live, and the consciousness that we live with. We do not get to pick where, when, and how. Like this man who left this world, he was climbing up the stairs in his house to go and worship his deities. He was worshiping his deities. And he was just climbing up to go and worship his deities. He falls back. And that was it. And his wife didn't even know. His smartwatch called 911, and the fire department showed up, and the ambulance showed up, and his wife was in the living room. And why is the fire truck here? Why is the ambulance here? And then she comes to notice that he just fell. So it's hard to say that most people can pick and choose when they die. Of course, when you commit suicide, that is something you choose. But that's going against the laws of nature and against God's design. And so therefore, we may be in for some surprise when you fight against the current. Radha, what is your take on it?
I think that was nicely explained.
That's it? That's all you got to say?
I mean, I guess I don't worry too much about the semantics of that because it's like, I'm never really going to know. And all I can do is what I can do now. So I'm more kind of like concerned about that because for all I know, it could happen tomorrow. It could happen in 10 years. That could be my predestined plan, or that could be, you know, a separate choice that I make, or that could be Krishna taking away my karma. Who knows? But it's like, regardless, I don't really know. So the best I can do is like what I can do now. And that's kind of what I focus on more.
Okay. So in this text, Dehi nosmin yatha dehe, the embodied soul continuously passes from boyhood to youth to old. Is that the what's the translation again?
Yeah. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change.
So, you know, for whenever I think of this text, I always think how this body has so much value as long as there is consciousness in it. As soon as consciousness is gone from this body, the spark is gone, this body loses all its value. It's something that I realized, like this man, he was an extremely materially wealthy man. And when he left, while he was alive, everything had a lot of value. But when he left, his body is just going to be cremated and it'll be gone. And where does it go? What came and what went? So these are questions that I used to always ask myself. And the reality is, I had chopped my finger. One of my fingers is actually, it's missing. Part of it is missing. And I didn't realize it was a good test for me. I was teaching a class at Georgia State University, and they had this metal doors, and they were stuck. So I tried to unstuck the metal doors by pulling it, and it came sliding so fast I couldn't pull my finger out. And part of my finger just got chopped off and landed on the floor, and I didn't notice anything. I thought everything was fine. And then I was walking around putting the yoga mats, and I see there's blood on the floor, and I was thinking, whose blood is this? Someone's hurt. And then I noticed there's a piece of my finger was missing, and I looked on the floor and I found my finger piece. So I picked it up and I was trying to connect it. Balaram, you were there with me, you remember? Yeah, it was wild. I was trying to connect it. What is it?
First impression of Veda. He's like, he's not phased. He's just like, oh, is that mine?
I didn't realize that my finger was missing. I was like, is that mine? And I started checking to see if I could connect it. And it wasn't connecting, it wasn't sticking together. And then, we walked to the Grady Hospital right next to Georgia State University. And we go to the doctors, and I asked the doctor, I said, hey, doc, is there any way you could put this finger together? And the doctor's looking at me like I'm some sort of crazy guy. And he says, yeah, we could try. So we go into the surgery room, and they're trying to put me to sleep. And I said, can you just please do this where I can see what you guys are doing? And they're like, okay, we can try. So they try to put local anesthetic on my hand, and I'm watching them, chisel the bone to make sure that they can try and connect it. And, they're trying everything, and I'm watching them do it. And I was just thinking to myself, I said, this finger that I have, there's so much effort being put into it. Just this little piece of finger. They sent me a bill of almost $12,000 just to put a little piece of my finger back together. And they couldn't succeed. So they just chopped it all off, and they filed it, and they just gave me a stub, And they sent me a $12,000 bill. And I was thinking, how is this little piece of me worth $12,000? Because when I die, my body is probably going to be worth, less than $10. And this is what consciousness can do to someone. A little piece of you, to put it together, a failed attempt itself would cost you $12,000. And that value is strictly there because there is consciousness in this body. If there was no consciousness in this body, that piece of finger would mean nothing. So that was my meditation, how it really is us, who we are inside of this body, that is really the source of value that this body has. This body has very little value, and yet our whole life is spent on adding value to this body. And I'm like, yo, people, something is not right here. What do you think about that, Radha? I mean, you go to school, you added value to your material identity that you can't take none of it with you. So what's on it?
It's really a balance, right? It's like such a balance, because on one hand, your body's your vehicle, and you really need it to support your service. And you also need your mind to be like steady to support your service. So like, we do want to invest some time in like becoming educated and getting good jobs and taking care of our bodies. But then on the other, it's like, we don't want that to, in our ego, for that to kind of consume our consciousness, such that our motive becomes more body-centered and less soul-centered. So I guess maybe it really comes down more to the motive, right? Like, if you're going to pay $12,000, put your finger back in. Did you stop and think like, okay, how can this help my service? And then if it can't, then you just don't do it.
Yeah. So
Did you put your finger back on, right? You paid the $12,000.
no,
Let's
no,
see
I
your
did
finger.
not.
I want to see your finger. Hold
No,
your
no,
finger up.
it's actually
Oh, look at that.
and actually I just froze that finger. It's in my freezer. I don't know why. I just
So you
never
did
figured out.
so the finger is just the way that it is. So that was your decision.
Yeah, just just a little piece of me is gone. What's the big deal? But it's interesting though how much my consciousness is affected by the little missing finger. Like whenever I try to do something, I'm conscious. I don't want anyone to see my flaws. I don't want anyone to see my finger. It's like you become conscious of it. But I'm conscious of the fact that I'm conscious. So that's why I try to bring this verse is very powerful to me because, dhiras tatra namuhyati. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. This is the observer consciousness that Krishna is talking about that we have to cultivate. He's talking to his friend. I said, yo, buddy, don't be worried about it. You see what's happening to the body. It's not really worth investing all our time and energy and resources in just to take care of this body. What we really need to do is to observe the functionings of the body. And when you're an observer of that, then you're not bewildered by this change that happens.
The other thing I feel like we could get from this too is like it's built over time, like it incrementally happens, these bodily changes, these changes, in the same way that like our knowledge builds incrementally. So we can't necessarily expect just to have like this same realization like right off the bat. Like it might be really difficult for somebody to not have a finger. Like they might be so insecure about it that better to do something about it than like to let it consume their mind in such a way that affects their consciousness. So it's like also kind of honoring that, right? And knowing that these realizations, they take time and they build on each other. And it's like a little incremental process. And as long as we're taking those like baby steps and trying to be where we are and make a little bit more progress each day, then we're doing okay, right?
Yes. It's a gradual process. If every day, whatever we're doing, we give not 100% of our time to maintain the body and the mind and the senses, but at least every single day, 45 minutes to an hour goes towards taking care of who we truly are, the soul within this body. The true valuable asset is the diamond that shines from inside. And we just keep shining the box that holds this diamond inside. But we never open the box to really see the beauty inside and look at the world from inside out instead of looking at the world, and then bringing it inside from outside in. I think here Nild has a question. His hand is up. I think he had something he wanted to add to this.
Yes, thank you. You often talk about how this practice is based on scientific experiences and proof that way. And yet, how do we know that an unborn child knows its past? How do we know that our soul goes from ours to another being in its entirety? How is that scientifically proved over the years, as opposed to some of the other beliefs of other religions that you seem not to think are true because they're not based on science? How do we know it? Has someone come back and said this is their experience?
Beautiful question.
How does it happen?
Yeah. So I want to first give you what the yoga answer is to that question, because the yoga sages knew that this question would be asked. They answered this question with a question. And the question is, how do you know who your father is? What is the best authority to go to? The
Your mother.
best authority to know who your father is to go to your mama. To ask your mom, hey mom, who's my father? So the yoga text, the sages are explaining, if you, all these things that we're sharing, you know, for thousands of years, this knowledge has been passed down. So the wisdom texts are considered to be the mother. It's showing us how to, showing us the truth. And the mother knows, and this knowledge is called Saraswati Devi, the goddess. And so therefore she is our mother. And so whenever we hear the wisdom text speaking to us, then we accept that as authority. Because otherwise everyone can create their own philosophy. Everyone can come up with a theory. And everybody does speculate and come up. And science is ever changing. The science is made by humans, and humans are subjected to 4 flaws: imperfect senses, bound to make mistakes. What are the 2 others, Radha? You remember?
Cheating propensity.
Cheating propensity and
Illusion.
so these are the 4 defects of humans. And if defective humans can create machines and we think that those machines are going to be perfect, then there is something wrong with our thinking. If something defective can create something perfect, some people may think that theory is great, but not most people. So therefore, science has its place in society because it's very powerful. Because of science, we're here right now, associating, having this beautiful discussion from all over the world. There's someone here from Luxembourg, a country of less than 500,000 people. And we are all able to get together. This is all contribution of science. So it has its place, it has its utility, but science cannot be absolute. Material science cannot be absolute. And therefore, we resort to spiritual science. The wisdom texts, the Vedas, are spiritual scientific texts. And what is the laboratory? We are the laboratory. We get to experiment and experience. Spirituality is about experience, it's experiential. And this process that we are discussing in our Heartspace calls is Bhakti and Vedanta. Very important. Vedanta means it is a process of a practice of inquiring from the self and applying the knowledge, inquiring, questioning, and applying. And Bhakti is the process of love, to make sure that the loving component, the right emotion is there in every one of our practice. So we're not there doing scientific experiments on ourselves. For example, you know, Balaram tells me every time he is upset about something, he tells me, when I don't do my sadhana, I am a grumpy, angry man.
Those are your words.
In many words, he says this to me, right? In many words, many words. I'm trying to keep it short. And the beauty is that the spiritual science that he practices, it makes his life easier. He's been on the both spectrums of science. Balaram, why don't you tell us how would you answer Neil's question, because you're the scientist that we have here.
Yeah, I think in science they have a certain, they call it rigor of proof. They have certain standard for proving things. But the fact is that there's only certain things that are provable. And so there's a category of science where they measure what is provable. And in industry, it works great because you can build machines without getting into the world of the unknown. But as soon as you ask questions that matter, like questions about death, you quickly get into sort of the grayer areas. And so I think even though we like certainty, that there is still rigorous models of proof that kind of triangulate what is sensible and what is logical, and it may not be as beautiful as what we're used to with atoms and photons and like physics, but it is still rigorous. It is still mathematical and scientific. That's how I feel.
Nil, we will have we'll have more time to sit together because I love your question. But one thing I was thinking is how science deals with matter, deals with earth, water, fire, air, ether. This is what the area of science. So science deals with matter, and we say spirituality is what matters. So because spirituality is really the journey of the soul, the spark, the consciousness that ignites the functioning of our existence, and all the creation that we see in the world, it is a creation of consciousness. And this is what a sage that sees this incredible creation and manifestation of consciousness is able to see things in such clarity, is not bewildered by the little changes of life that we have, birth, old age, disease, and death. He's like, this is so cool. He just observes all of this and he does not indulge in it and gets caught up into this illusory trap, they call it.
Also, Veda, have you seen those TV shows where like kids remember their past memories or their past lives?
Yes.
They like remember who their parent was, or it's like an exceptional case, but it's not really proof, but there's some evidence out there of people recalling their past lives.
There are many such people in India. They remember and they solve different mysteries. You can YouTube them. I'm sure you'll find tons of them. Our time is up. And I don't know. I thought we covered some territory about death. Does anybody would like to add anything or share a realization, reflection before we leave? And one thing I will recommend that I know that I was told that this discussions that we have goes live at some point. And I would really love to get your feedback on what we share, because it really helps me to think of things that you're interested in hearing from the wisdom text. And the Vedas are extremely vast. I remember someone asked me one time if we can talk about aliens. And then he never asked for it again, so we stopped. But we did have whole discussions about them. So if you do have time, I'd say please tell us, share your thoughts on what we shared today on whatever. Keshri, where is this posted?
This will be posted on YouTube.
Yeah, if you give your comments and you tell us what you would like to hear more, we will have these discussions. What do you think, Radha?
It's great.
I personally was thinking that I would like to cover the Bhagavad Gita, if all of you think is a good idea. Like to read one text of the Gita and just discuss how is it relevant to us? Because Bhagavad Gita is a text that's happening in the middle of a battlefield, two friends talking. It's so cool. And life is like a battlefield. We are constantly being attacked in this world. Our mind does not spare us. We're attacked from the outside, we're attacked from the inside, and it helps, Bhagavad Gita helps us to prepare our consciousness to deal with this multi-angular battles. And so I was thinking that we could have use the Heartspace time to bring everything we learned from the Gita to the heart, like one verse at a time. What do you guys think? Who has read the Gita? Raise your hand if you have. Who has never read the Gita? Who would like to group wise just study and see how it's applicable? It was spoken in 45 minutes. It's very cryptic. So we have to decode it. That's why I was thinking we just go with it.
Hey, Veda, there were a lot of questions on this topic. I'm wondering if we can maybe continue it next week, possibly. Liz had the same question.
Oh, okay. I guess people like death very much.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions in the chat that were not answered.
Oopsie. So yeah, let's regroup next week. This time is up for this week. Let's regroup next week and answer the questions and come with your questions. And please feel free to bring your thoughts and contributions as well, not just questions, because I'd like to hear your experiences in this topic, because it's something that everyone will experience, whether we like it or not. So any other announcements, Keshavi?
I was just going to make a plug for the Connecticut or local folks that our Kirtan passes are closing this week. So if you would like to join us for Kirtan when Veda's in town in July, please join us. I'll put the link in the chat.
And yeah, I'm also going to be doing, after Connecticut retreat, we're doing a retreat in Pennsylvania, Gitanagari. And then I'm doing one in North Georgia mountains. These are all like nature destination retreats. So just hang out with me. That's all, man. Just once a month. Let's hang out. So that's the plan. That's what these retreats are. Just we get together and just have a deeper heart-to-heart connections. And then we have Durga Devi has something to say. Nadia, Enriquez, tell us what's happening with the Dutch Revolution. Everybody watch out for the Dutch. I was told by a Dutch lady that if you ain't Dutch, you ain't much. We cannot hear you. Nadia, we cannot hear you. Can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay, we were just waving goodbye.
Oh. Thank you all
We
so
have
much.
a lady waiting for us and we have to meet her.
Okay, thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah.
beautiful souls all around the world. May you
Bye.
all be loved and blessed. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste.
Bye
everyone.
bye. Thank you, Veda.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye bye.
I don't know how to leave this chat.